The massive chamber of the Galactic Council buzzed with excitement as Earth's first official delegation stepped through the gleaming doors. The room's high ceiling stretched up into darkness, while floating platforms held representatives from over 300 species. Their curious eyes focused on the small group of humans walking down the central aisle. Dr. James Miller tried not to stare at the incredible variety of alien life forms around him. As Earth's leading xenobiologist, he had studied reports about these species for years, but seeing them in person made his heart race with excitement. Some looked almost human, while others were as different as one could imagine. From crystalline beings that floated in the air to massive creatures that seemed more like living mountains. "Welcome, representatives of Earth," announced the council speaker, a tall being with silvery skin who stood on the highest platform. "Your achievement of faster-than-light travel has earned your species a place among the stars. We look forward to sharing our knowledge with you." Miller listened to the formal speeches with half his attention. His eyes kept drifting to the massive screens showing various planets under council protection. Something about the atmospheric readings caught his scientific interest. After 15 years of studying alien environments, he had developed a keen eye for patterns. "Excuse me," he whispered to his colleague, Professor Thomas Reed. "Are you seeing what I'm seeing in these readings?" Reed adjusted his glasses and looked at where Miller pointed. "The gas composition variations. Yes, quite odd. Almost like something's causing regular changes in the atmosphere," Miller finished. "But these planets are listed as uninhabited." Later that evening, in their assigned quarters aboard the council station, Miller couldn't stop thinking about what he'd seen. He pulled up more data on his tablet, comparing readings from different empty planets. The patterns were there, subtle but consistent changes that suggested intelligent activity. When he presented his findings to the Council's Science Division the next day, their response was not what he expected. "Impossible," stated senior researcher Bloom, his tentacles waving dismissively. "We have been monitoring these worlds for centuries. Our technology is far more advanced than yours. If there was any sign of civilization, we would have found it. But the data clearly shows," Miller started. "Your equipment must be malfunctioning," Bloom interrupted. "Perhaps it was damaged during your journey here. We will provide you with proper council technology." Miller felt his face grow hot with frustration, but years of scientific work had taught him patience. He accepted the new equipment with a polite thank you, but he didn't stop his own research. Every night, he gathered more data, adding to his growing collection of evidence. 2 weeks later, he made a breakthrough. Working late in his temporary lab, he noticed something extraordinary. When he combined regular scans with quantum field measurements, a pattern emerged that couldn't be explained by natural phenomena. "Look at this," he told Reed the next morning, pointing to his screen. "These energy signatures, they're too regular to be natural. Something or someone is causing them." Reed's eyes widened as he studied the data. "James, this is incredible. But why hasn't anyone else noticed?" "Maybe they weren't looking the right way," Miller said quietly. "The Council's technology is advanced, but they've been using the same methods for centuries. Sometimes you need a fresh perspective to see what's right in front of you." They spent the next 3 days double-checking their findings before Miller requested another meeting with the Science Division. This time, he came prepared with multiple data sets and analysis from different methods. As he walked to the meeting, Miller felt a mix of nervousness and excitement. He didn't know it yet, but he was about to start a chain of events that would shake the Galactic Council to its foundations and change humanity's place in the universe forever. The truth was out there, hiding in plain sight. And sometimes, it took a newcomer's eyes to see what others had missed for centuries. Dr. Miller stood before the Science Division again, but this time he wasn't alone. Dr. Anna Wells, Earth's leading quantum physicist, stood beside him. They had spent the last week combining their knowledge to create something new, a detection system that no one had tried before. "Your previous findings were dismissed," senior researcher Bloom reminded them, his tentacles moving impatiently. "Why should we waste more time?" "Because this time, we're not just looking at atmospheric changes. Wells answered. She pressed a button on her tablet, and a hologram appeared in the center of the room. We've combined infrared scanning with quantum resonance detection. A hologram showed a planet that the Council had labeled as uninhabited. At first, it looked empty, just mountains and valleys. Then Wells adjusted the display settings. Suddenly, patterns of energy appeared, forming shapes that couldn't be natural. These are artificial structures, Miller explained, pointing to the geometric patterns. They're just slightly out of phase with normal spacetime. That's why traditional scanners missed them. The room fell silent. Even Bloom's tentacles stopped moving. Impossible, another Council scientist whispered, but there was doubt in their voice. Humans have a saying, Wells said. Sometimes the best place to hide something is in plain sight. We think that's what's happening here. Over the next few hours, they showed more evidence. Energy patterns that repeated too perfectly to be natural. Heat signatures that didn't match their surroundings. Quantum fluctuations that suggested advanced technology at work. But the Council members weren't easily convinced. If such beings exist, one asked, why haven't they contacted us? Maybe they have their reasons, Miller suggested. Maybe they're watching us, learning about us, or maybe they're just very private. That evening, in the station's observation deck, Miller and Wells looked out at the stars. Their presentation had caused quite a stir. Some Council members demanded more proof, while others wanted to shut down their research entirely. They're scared, Wells said, watching distant ships move through space. We've been here less than a month, and we're questioning everything they thought they knew. Miller nodded. The Council's been the highest authority in known space for thousands of years. It must be hard to admit they might have missed something this big. Their tablets beeped at the same time. New data was coming in from their sensors on one of the empty planets. Wells pulled up the readings, and her eyes widened. James, look at this, she said. The energy patterns. They're changing. It's like they know we're looking for them, Miller finished. The next morning, they found their lab access restricted. The Council needs time to verify your findings, they were told. But Miller and Wells hadn't survived years of scientific research by giving up easily. Using their Earth-made equipment in their private quarters, they kept monitoring the planets. The patterns were becoming clearer every day. Whatever was out there, it was definitely artificial. And it was responding to their scans. We need to go public with this, Wells said after 3 days of gathering more data. The Council can't ignore it if everyone knows. Miller thought about it. Going against the Council's wishes could end their careers here before they really began. But as a scientist, his duty was to the truth. Let's do it, he decided. But first, we need something they can't deny. Something so clear that even the most skeptical Council member will have to accept it. Neither of them knew it then, but they were about to get exactly what they wanted, in a way that would change everything they thought they knew about life in the galaxy. The message appeared on their screens at exactly midnight station time. At first, Miller thought he was seeing things. Too many late nights and too much coffee. But Wells saw it too. We have been watching. You see differently. We would speak. The words floated on their screens in perfect English, though neither of them had input anything. Miller's hands shook as he reached for the keyboard. Who are you? He typed. The response came instantly. We are the ones you seek, the ones your Council never found. We exist in the space between spaces. Wells quickly started recording everything. This is impossible, she whispered. Our systems are completely isolated from the station's network. We choose when to be seen, the mysterious message continued. You humans, you look with new eyes. You question what others accept. This interests us. Miller and Wells spent the next hour in careful communication with the unknown beings. They learned that these creatures called themselves the Watchers, though this was just the closest human translation. They existed slightly out of phase with normal spacetime, making them naturally invisible to most forms of detection. Should we alert the Council? Wells asked, After their mysterious conversation partners fell silent. Miller shook his head. They'd never believe us without proof. We need. He stopped mid-sentence. The air in front of them began to shimmer, like heat waves rising from hot pavement. Slowly, a form took shape. It was like watching fog turn into glass, then watching that glass turn into a living being. The creature before them was beautiful in an alien way. Its body seemed to be made of shifting layers of translucent material, with points of light moving beneath the surface like stars in a living galaxy. It stood roughly as tall as a human, but had no fixed shape, its form flowing and changing like water in zero gravity. "Hello," it said, its voice seeming to come from everywhere and nowhere at once. "I am the first speaker. We have chosen to show ourselves to you." Miller and Wells stood frozen, years of scientific training barely preparing them for this moment. The first speaker moved closer, its body casting strange shadows that shouldn't have been possible. "Your species is young," it said, "but you see things others miss. You question. You wonder. You look beyond the obvious. These are rare qualities in the galaxy. Why?" Miller had to clear his throat to continue. "Why have you stayed hidden all this time?" The being's colors shifted to deeper blues. "The council races. They believe they know everything. They stopped looking, stopped questioning. We watched them for centuries, seeing them pass our worlds again and again, never thinking to look differently. But they have such advanced technology," Wells said. "Technology without curiosity is like a ship without a pilot," the first speaker replied. "It can only follow its programmed course." Suddenly, alarms began blaring throughout the station. The council's sensors had finally detected the unusual energy readings coming from their quarters. The first speaker's form rippled. "Others come," it said. "We will show ourselves to them too, but remember, you were the first to truly see us. This will not be forgotten." As footsteps thundered down the corridor outside, the first speaker's body began to fade. "We have much to teach you," it said, its voice growing fainter. "And perhaps much to learn from you as well." The door burst open. Council security officers rushed in, followed by senior researcher Bloom. They all stopped dead at the sight of the first speaker's disappearing form. What is that?" Bloom's tentacles were practically tied in knots. Miller smiled. "That," he said, "is what happens when you keep looking even after others tell you there's nothing to see." The last thing they saw before the first speaker vanished completely was what might have been a smile, a ripple of bright colors that danced across its surface like aurora borealis on a clear night. The discovery was made. Now came the hard part, dealing with the consequences. The council's main chamber was in chaos. News of the Watchers had spread through the station like wildfire, and now every species wanted to speak at once. The floating platforms were packed with representatives shouting over each other, their voices echoing off the high ceiling. Miller and Wells sat quietly in the center of the storm. Next to them, the first speaker remained partially visible, a shimmering presence that drew every eye in the room. "Order." The council speaker's voice boomed through the chamber. "We will have order." Slowly, the noise died down. The speaker turned to face the first speaker, trying to maintain dignity despite his obvious shock. "You claim your people have been watching us for centuries," he asked. "We have watched and learned and waited," the first speaker replied, its voice carrying easily through the huge room. "We watched as you mapped our worlds and saw nothing. We watched as you declared space empty when it was full of life." A council member from a crystalline species floated forward. "This is an insult. Our scanning technology is the most advanced in known space. And that is why you failed." Miller spoke up. "You were so sure of your advanced technology that you stopped looking for new ways to see." The chamber erupted again. Some council members demanded immediate access to the Watchers' technology. Others called for Miller and Wells to be stripped of their positions for going around proper channels. Still others sat in shocked silence, wondering what other wonders they might have missed. We choose who we speak with, the first speaker announced, silencing the room. We choose humans as our primary contact. This statement sent new waves of shock through the assembly. The council had always controlled first contact situations, always managed the flow of technology and knowledge between species. This was unprecedented. You can't do that. Senior researcher Bloom's tentacles were writing in agitation. There are protocols, procedures. The procedures you created without our consent. The first speaker interrupted, its form shifting to darker colors. We are not a newly discovered primitive species. We have watched your civilization grow. We know your strengths and your weaknesses. The council speaker raised his hands for calm. Surely we can reach an agreement that benefits everyone. The council has centuries of experience managing interspecies relations. Yet you never managed to see us, Wells pointed out. Maybe it's time for some new approaches. Over the next few hours, the debate raged on. The Watchers remained firm. They would work primarily with humans, though they were willing to share some knowledge with the council. Several younger council members actually supported this idea, seeing it as a chance to reform what they viewed as an outdated system. The galaxy is changing, one of them argued. Maybe we need to change with it. By the end of the day, a compromise was reached. The Watchers would establish their main embassy on Earth, but would also maintain contact with the Council through human representatives. It wasn't what the Council wanted, but they had little choice. As Miller and Wells left the chamber that evening, they found themselves surrounded by representatives from various species, all wanting to establish better relations with Earth. Funny how things change, Wells said quietly to Miller. Yesterday they barely took us seriously. Today they're lining up to talk to us. Miller nodded, watching the first speaker glide beside them, its form shifting between visibility and invisibility. I wonder how many other amazing things are out there, just waiting for someone to look at them the right way. The first speaker's colors brightened slightly. That, it said, is exactly why we chose you. Behind them, the council chamber was still buzzing with activity. The political landscape of the galaxy had shifted, and at its center was the youngest spacefaring species of them all, humanity, the ones who dared to look where others had stopped searching. Miller and Wells stared at the massive data display in their new laboratory on the station. The Watchers had just shared their first batch of observations, collected over centuries of invisible monitoring. What they saw made their blood run cold. This can't be right, Wells whispered, scrolling through file after file. Some council members have been breaking their own laws, Miller finished. The Watchers saw everything. The first speaker materialized beside them, its form rippling with dark purple colors. For centuries, we watched the powerful exploit the weak. We saw treaties broken in secret. We observed weapons being developed despite bans. The data showed it all. Species who claimed to be peaceful had secret military bases on supposedly empty worlds. Trade agreements were routinely violated. Some advanced races were secretly interfering with developing civilizations, despite the Council's strict non-interference laws. We have to do something with this information, Miller said, running his hand through his hair. But if we reveal it all at once, it could tear the Council apart. Wells finished. She turned to the first speaker. Why show us this now? The alien being's colors shifted to a deep blue. Because change is needed. But change must come carefully, or it brings chaos. We trust humans to find the right way. A soft chime announced another visitor. Ambassador Thompson, Earth's diplomatic representative, entered the lab. His face was serious as he looked at the displays. The Council's leadership is already nervous about what the Watchers might know, he said. This proves they were right to be worried. Miller pointed to one particular file. Look at this. The Centauri incident last year. When that trade fleet disappeared, it wasn't an accident. One of the Council's founding races destroyed them for trying to establish independent trade routes. The room fell silent as they considered the implications. Earth was the newest member of a system that was far more corrupt than anyone had imagined. If we reveal everything, Wells said slowly, it could start a war. Some species would want revenge. Others would try to grab power in the chaos. The first speaker moved closer to the displays, its form casting strange shadows on the data. This is why we remained hidden. We saw the truth, but knew revealing it would bring destruction. Yet now we have a chance to fix things, Miller said. Not by exposing everything at once, but by using this knowledge to guide changes. Ambassador Thompson nodded slowly. We could start with smaller revelations, show enough proof of minor violations to push for reforms, but hold back the worst revelations as leverage. A peaceful revolution, Wells said, using knowledge instead of weapons. The first speaker's colors brightened. This is why we chose humans. You understand balance. You see not just the problem, but the path to solution. They spent the next hours planning. The Watchers had collected evidence of nearly every secret deal and hidden crime in Council space over the past 3 centuries. Used carefully, this information could reshape galactic society without destroying it. We'll start with the trade violation evidence, Thompson decided. Push for reforms in how trade routes are managed, then gradually reveal more as needed. Miller looked at the star map showing all the hidden facilities and secret bases they now knew about. Earth is so new to space travel. We thought we were joining a perfect, advanced civilization. Instead, you join as agents of change, the first speaker said. Your fresh eyes see what must be fixed. Your young wisdom knows how to fix it carefully. As they began organizing the data, more Watchers appeared in the lab, their shimmering forms adding their own knowledge to the database. The future of the galaxy would be shaped by this information, and by the choices they made in using it. The truth had been hidden in plain sight for centuries. Now it was time to bring it into the light, one careful step at a time. The emergency meeting of the Council started badly and got worse. Half the chambers were empty. Many representatives had suddenly found urgent business elsewhere after the first revelations about trade violations. Those who remained were divided into angry groups, shouting across the chamber at each other. All information about the Watchers must be classified immediately, demanded Council member Brightstone, his crystalline form flashing with angry red lights. Their very existence is a threat to galactic stability. Miller, Wells, and Ambassador Thompson sat at the human section, watching the chaos unfold. The first speaker stood with them, its form more visible than usual, radiating a quiet strength. You have no authority to classify us, the first speaker's voice cut through the noise. We existed before your council. We will exist after it. Is that a threat? Senior researcher Bloom's tentacles curled aggressively. It is a fact, the first speaker replied calmly. Like the facts we shared about the illegal weapons in your secret facilities. The chamber went deadly quiet. That information hadn't been made public yet. Bloom's color changed to a sickly pale shade. Ambassador Thompson stood up. The evidence of violations we revealed last week was just the beginning. We know about the secret bases, the hidden deals, the eliminated competitors. Lies, shouted one council member, but there was fear in their voice. Wells activated a small projector, showing a star map. These are the locations of 30 illegal military installations, built by council members who voted for the weapons ban. More shouts of denial filled the room, but she continued. The Watchers saw you build them. They saw everything. Then they must be controlled. Brightstone moved his platform forward aggressively. If they can spy on council members, they are a danger to everyone. Suddenly, the chamber's lights flickered. More Watchers appeared, hundreds of them, their shimmering forms filling the empty spaces of the room. The effect was stunning and terrifying to those with guilty consciences. You speak of control, the first speaker said, its voice carried by all its people. But you cannot control what you cannot see, what you cannot touch, what you never truly found. Miller stepped forward. The council has a choice to make. Work with us to reform the system, or we release everything. All the secrets, all the crimes, all the hidden deals and covered-up accidents. This is blackmail, someone shouted. This is accountability, Thompson corrected, something the council seems to have forgotten about. The first speaker moved to the center of the chamber, its form growing larger. We chose humanity as our partners because they understand balance. They know change must come, but they seek to build, not destroy. What do you want? The council speaker asked quietly, speaking for the first time. Reform, Thompson said simply. Real reform. Independent oversight of council activities. Fair representation for all species, not just the powerful ones. And most importantly, a return to the council's original mission. Peaceful cooperation and genuine scientific discovery. The chamber erupted in debate again, but this time it was different. Younger council members spoke up in support. Smaller worlds that had long been ignored added their voices. The balance of power was shifting before their eyes. If you try to suppress this, Wells warned, if you try to silence us or the Watchers, everything comes out. All of it, to every species in known space. The Watchers began to fade away one by one, leaving only the first speaker. Its final words echoed in the chamber. Choose wisely. The future of more than just the council depends on it. As Miller looked around the chamber, he saw fear on many faces, but he also saw hope on others. Change was coming to the galaxy, ready or not. The next few hours would determine whether that change came through wisdom or through chaos. 6 months after the crisis, Miller stood at the window of the new Joint Species Research Center on Earth, watching ships from across the galaxy land at the nearby spaceport. Each vessel brought scientists eager to learn new ways of looking at the universe. Still hard to believe how much has changed, Wells said, joining him at the window. She held up her tablet, showing the latest news. The Council's Reform Act had just been approved by the last remaining holdout species. They didn't have much choice, Miller replied with a slight smile. It's amazing how cooperative people become when they know they're being watched. The first speaker materialized beside them, its colors bright with satisfaction. The Watchers are now watched, it said. This brings balance. The reforms had transformed the Galactic Council. The old, secretive leadership had been replaced by a more open system. Every species, no matter how small or new to space travel, now had a real voice in decisions. Independent observers, including some Watchers, monitored all council activities. Dr. Miller, a young researcher, hurried up to them, excitement clear on his face. We've detected another phase-shifted species. In the Orion sector. This was the biggest change of all. Once the Watchers revealed themselves, other hidden species began to emerge. Some existed in different phases of spacetime, like the Watchers. Others had simply been overlooked by the Council's rigid scanning methods. Each brought new knowledge and new ways of seeing the universe. How many is that now? Wells asked. 12 new species in 6 months, Miller said. All of them living right under the Council's nose for centuries. Makes you wonder what else is out there. The first speaker's form rippled with what they had learned was amusement. The universe is full of wonders. You just have to remember to keep looking. Their conversation was interrupted by Ambassador Thompson's arrival. He looked tired but satisfied. The new research sharing protocols are official, he announced. No more hoarding of scientific discoveries. Everything will be available to all species. Some of the older council members must hate that, Wells said. Thompson shrugged. They're learning to adapt. Amazing how seeing their secrets exposed changed their minds about transparency. Through the window, they watched as a group of young aliens from different species walked together toward the research center. Some were visible, others flickered in and out of phase, and some could only be seen through special devices. All were talking excitedly about their latest discoveries. That's the real victory, Miller said, pointing to the group. Not just finding new species, but learning to work together, to see things differently. The first speaker moved closer to the window, its form reflecting the sunlight in beautiful patterns. This is why we revealed ourselves to humans first. You understand that discovery is not just about finding new things. It's about finding new ways to look at everything. And new ways to work together. Wells added, watching more ships arrive. The tablet chimed with another update. A joint human watcher research team had just made a breakthrough in quantum communications. Soon, sending messages across the galaxy would be instant and impossible to intercept. More changes, more discoveries, more progress. The galaxy's a bigger place than anyone imagined, Miller said, and we're just getting started. The first speaker's colors shifted to a deep, satisfied blue. Indeed, the age of hiding is over. The age of discovery begins. Outside, the sun was setting, painting the sky in brilliant colors. Ships continued to arrive, carrying curious minds from across the galaxy. Each one came seeking knowledge, bringing questions, ready to learn new ways of seeing the universe. The humans had done more than just discover an invisible species. They had shown the galaxy that there was always more to discover if you just remembered to keep looking with fresh eyes. And somewhere out there, other wonders waited to be found by those willing to see differently.